Poverty and Early Capitalism, the Birth of a New Economic Order. The emergence of capitalism in the late Middle Ages and its subsequent evolution during the early modern period marked a profound shift in economic and social systems. As capitalism took root, it brought about significant changes in the distribution of wealth and the structure of society. In this article, we explore the birth of capitalism and its complex relationship with poverty. We also delve into the transformative impacts of enclosures, industrialization, and the rise of the working class on the socio-economic landscape of this era. The birth of capitalism, a paradigm shift. Capitalism's foundations. Capitalism, as an economic system, is characterized by private ownership of the means of production, market competition, and the pursuit of profit. It emerged during the late medieval and early modern periods, with key developments such as the expansion of trade and the establishment of mercantile capitalism. Effects on wealth distribution. Capitalism brought with it a shift in wealth distribution. While it generated opportunities for entrepreneurial individuals to accumulate wealth, it also resulted in the concentration of resources among a privileged few. This uneven distribution of wealth was a harbinger of the poverty and inequality that would persist throughout the capitalist era. Enclosures and agricultural transformations. The enclosure movement. One of the defining features of early capitalism was the enclosure movement in England and parts of Europe. Enclosures involved the privatization of common lands, displacing peasant communities and transforming agriculture from subsistence farming to profit-oriented production. Impact on poverty. Enclosures had a profound effect on poverty. Dispossessed peasants and rural communities faced economic hardship and often migrated to urban centers in search of employment. This influx of labor into burgeoning industrial cities contributed to the rise of the working class. Industrialization and the rise of the working class. The Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century, marked a transformative phase in early capitalism. It brought mechanization, factory-based production, and urbanization on an unprecedented scale. While it fueled economic growth, it also led to harsh working conditions and poverty for many laborers. Factory labor and poverty. Factory labor during the early stages of industrialization often meant grueling hours, low wages, and dangerous working conditions. Workers, including children, faced exploitation and lived in squalid urban slums. The juxtaposition of industrial wealth and working-class poverty was stark. The emergence of labor movements. As industrialization progressed, labor movements began to organize in response to the injustices of early capitalism. Workers demanded better wages, shorter workdays, and improved working conditions. These movements laid the foundation for labor rights and the eventual improvement of workers' living standards. Conclusion. Early capitalism's legacy on poverty and progress. The birth of capitalism during the late Middle Ages and its expansion during the early modern period reshaped societies and economies. While capitalism generated unprecedented economic growth and innovation, it also perpetuated poverty and inequality, especially during the phases of enclosures and early industrialization. Understanding the historical development of capitalism and its complex interplay with poverty is essential in the context of today's global economic systems. It reminds us that the pursuit of equitable and just societies requires vigilance, social reforms, and an ongoing commitment to addressing the inequalities that persist as the legacy of early capitalism. Modernity and the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century and continued into the 19th century, stands as one of the most profound transformations in human history. It reshaped economies, societies, and the daily lives of people around the world. This article explores the Industrial Revolution's impact on work and living conditions, the prevalence of child labor, and the rise of labor movements that sought to address the challenges of this transformative era. The transformation of work and living conditions. Shift from agrarian to industrial. The Industrial Revolution marked a shift from agrarian economies, where most people worked on farms, to industrial economies centered around factories and manufacturing. This transition altered not only how people worked, but also where they lived. Urbanization. As industries and factories proliferated, people flocked to urban centers in search of employment. This massive urbanization led to the rapid growth of cities and the development of industrial hubs. However, it also created overcrowded, unsanitary, and often dismal living conditions in urban slums. Harsh working conditions. Factory labor during the early years of industrialization was characterized by long hours, low wages, and hazardous working conditions. Workers, including women and children, toiled in settings where safety regulations and workers' rights were virtually non-existent. Child labor and its prevalence. Children in the workforce. One of the stark realities of the Industrial Revolution was the prevalence of child labor. Many families, driven by economic necessity, sent their children to work in factories, mines, and mills. These young laborers endured grueling hours and harsh conditions. Impact on health and development. Child labor had detrimental effects on the health and development of young workers. Many suffered from stunted growth, injuries, and chronic health problems. Their education was often sacrificed in the pursuit of meager wages. Social and legal repercussions. Over time, the exploitation of child labor began to garner public attention and condemnation. Societal awareness, combined with advocacy and legislative efforts, eventually led to reforms that aimed to restrict child labor and ensure children received education. The rise of labor movements. Collective action. The harsh conditions and exploitation faced by industrial workers sparked the emergence of labor movements. Workers began organizing themselves into labor unions to collectively bargain for better wages, shorter workdays, safer conditions, and improved treatment. Strikes and protests. Labor movements often resorted to strikes and protests to pressure employers and governments into addressing their demands. These actions played a pivotal role in securing labor rights and better working conditions. Long-term impact. The labor movements of the Industrial Revolution era had a lasting impact on workers' rights and labor laws. Their struggles paved the way for the establishment of labor unions, workplace safety regulations, and minimum wage laws that continue to shape labor standards today. Conclusion. Lessons from an era of transformation. The Industrial Revolution and urbanization marked a period of profound change in human history. While these transformations ushered in unprecedented economic growth and technological advancements, they also highlighted the harsh realities of unchecked industrialization, including harsh working conditions and child labor. The rise of labor movements in response to these challenges serves as a testament to the resilience and determination of workers to secure their rights and improve their lives. As we reflect on this era, it reminds us of the importance of striking a balance between progress and the well-being of the workforce. It underscores the significance of labor rights, workplace safety, and social reform in shaping more equitable and just societies. Poverty and social reforms, building safety nets and philanthropic traditions. As industrialization and urbanization swept through the 19th and early 20th centuries, they brought with them profound societal changes, including the emergence of widespread poverty amidst economic growth. In response to these challenges, societies began to explore avenues for social reform. This article delves into the emergence of social welfare systems and safety nets, as well as the role of philanthropy and charitable organizations in addressing poverty during this transformative era. The emergence of social welfare and safety nets. Rise of the social question. The Industrial Revolution and its accompanying urbanization led to stark disparities in wealth and living conditions. As the gap between the rich and the poor widened, the social question emerged, prompting governments and thinkers to grapple with issues of poverty and social inequality. Early social reforms. Governments in Europe, particularly in the latter half of the 19th century, began introducing social reforms aimed at alleviating poverty. These reforms included the establishment of labor laws, public education systems, and regulations to improve working conditions. Welfare states. By the early 20th century, some nations began to develop comprehensive welfare states. These systems provided unemployment benefits, health care, pensions, and other forms of social support to citizens. The aim was to create a safety net that protected individuals and families from the worst effects of poverty. The role of philanthropy and charitable organizations. Philanthropic traditions. Amidst the need for social reform, philanthropy played a vital role in addressing immediate issues of poverty and inequality. Wealthy individuals, often inspired by religious or moral convictions, established philanthropic foundations and charitable organizations. Foundations and endowments. Prominent philanthropists like Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and the Ford family established foundations that funded a wide range of social programs. These foundations built libraries, supported education, and funded medical research, among other initiatives. Non-profit organizations. Charitable organizations, often formed by concerned citizens, religious groups, or social activists, provided essential services to impoverished communities. They operated soup kitchens, orphanages, shelters, and vocational training programs. Challenges and progress. Continued disparities. While social reforms and philanthropy made significant strides in alleviating poverty, disparities persisted. Challenges such as inadequate housing, access to quality health care, and income inequality remained pressing issues. The Great Depression. The 20th century brought new challenges, notably the Great Depression of the 1930s. The severity of this economic crisis prompted governments to expand social safety nets and introduce programs like Social Security in the United States. Ongoing debate. The balance between state-sponsored social welfare and philanthropic efforts remains a topic of debate. Some argue for greater government intervention and comprehensive welfare programs, while others emphasize the importance of private philanthropy and nonprofit organizations. Conclusion. A legacy of compassion and progress. The emergence of social welfare systems, safety nets, and philanthropic traditions during the 19th and 20th centuries reflects a compassionate response to the pressing issue of poverty. While these efforts have made significant strides in improving the lives of millions, challenges persist in the ongoing battle against poverty and inequality. The history of social reform and philanthropy serves as a testament to the enduring commitment of societies to address these complex issues and build more equitable and compassionate communities. Poverty in the 20th century, the struggles amidst turbulent times. The 20th century stands as an epoch of monumental global events, marked by two devastating world wars and economic upheavals. Amidst these historical tides, poverty remained a persistent challenge that affected societies worldwide. This article examines the impact of the Great Depression and the consequences of World Wars I and II on poverty in the 20th century. The Great Depression and its impact, the Roaring Twenties. The 1920s were characterized by a period of economic prosperity in many Western nations. However, this prosperity was often unevenly distributed, leading to income inequality and speculation in financial markets. The Wall Street Crash. In 1929, the Wall Street crash triggered the Great Depression, a catastrophic economic collapse that swept across the United States and had far-reaching global consequences. Stock markets crashed, banks failed, and businesses shuttered, leading to widespread unemployment and poverty. Widespread hardship. The Great Depression brought about severe economic hardship for millions. People lost their jobs, homes, and savings, resulting in breadlines, shantytowns, and a deepening sense of despair. Poverty became a stark and visible reality for many. Poverty in the aftermath of World Wars. World War I. The aftermath of World War I witnessed the destabilization of economies and societies. Many nations, including European powers, faced post-war economic challenges, inflation, and social dislocation. The war had drained resources and disrupted industries, leaving a legacy of economic instability and poverty. World War II. The Second World War, which spanned from 1939 to 1945, was a global conflict of unprecedented scale. While it led to significant technological advancements, it also resulted in immense human suffering. The war's destruction left many nations in ruins, with impoverished populations grappling with the aftermath of conflict. Reconstruction and recovery. In the post-war period, nations embarked on ambitious reconstruction efforts. The Marshall Plan, for instance, helped rebuild war-torn Europe. These efforts aimed to alleviate poverty by reviving economies and restoring stability to devastated regions. The legacy of poverty in the 20th century. Social safety nets. The hardships of the 20th century prompted governments to introduce social safety nets and welfare programs. These initiatives aimed to provide financial support, healthcare, and education to vulnerable populations. Progress and challenges. The mid-20th century saw significant progress in reducing poverty in many Western nations, thanks to economic growth and social policies. However, poverty continued to persist in various forms, and the global landscape remained marked by disparities. Global poverty issues. Beyond the Western world, poverty remained a pressing issue in developing countries. Efforts to address poverty, such as the establishment of international development organizations, sought to tackle issues like hunger, disease, and access to education. Conclusion: challenges, resilience, and hope. The 20th century was a tumultuous era marked by immense challenges, including economic depressions and 2 world wars. Poverty remained a constant companion for many, but it also spurred societies to address issues of inequality and social justice. The legacy of poverty in the 20th century serves as a reminder of the resilience of individuals and communities in the face of adversity and the ongoing global pursuit of a more equitable future.